Hello, hello, welcome, greetings. It's time for Discussing Tabletop for August 12th, 2017. This is our 41st episode. I was going to say July.
It's one of those months. It's one of those months in the
I was going to say
year.
July there for a second. I really was. Something about today was bringing me to July, but... Alright, so welcome to the show. We have, of course, with us my normal co-host, Joe. And today, though, with us, we have our returning guest, the Orcish Librarian, and we have...
Abnormal.
Okay, abnormal returning guest. And today, though, we have with us also a special guest, Daniel, who is one of the creators of the Myythic role-playing game system, which we did talk about previously a little bit, and he's going to help us go into depth more about it today. But today for the docket, though, we have a pretty full one. For our news of the week, we do want to talk about, they finally let all of us know about, like, the new cards from Magic and the Commander 2017, and everything we need to know about their 4 tribal-based decks. I do want to talk a little bit about the 3-pillar experience in Unearthed Arcana for Dungeons & Dragons. I do want to then move into talking about a new interesting board game, which is a lot of players, Sidereal Confluence. It's basically 4 to 9 players, and it's interesting because you're running a trade federation between all of you. Then we're going to dive into depths. I would want to talk then a bit about, we're going to talk about Myythic and kind of making a more online/app-based role-playing game system. And then I do want to talk with Daniel about what it's like to get the process of making your own kind of role-playing game system and gaming system. Oop, I'm hitting a button here. And then, of course, we'll have our normal segments of stories from the table and gaming sage advice. But why don't we dive into our first topic, though? We'll go through some of the news for the week. So, first thing is, Magic has pretty much spoiled all of, well, they like calling it spoilers. They've revealed all the stuff from Commander 2017, which we knew was tribal decks. And it's going to be cats, dragons, wizards, and vampires? Oh my.
No more cats.
You were so excited to do that bit, weren't you?
I actually came up with it right then and there. It's the DM in me was good for improvising a little bit there. I mean, we can see some interesting reprints, and there's a couple of other strange things in here that I will point out, and I guess if anybody else wants to point anything out. We have phasing. There's a
Phasing
spell...
is back.
Yes. Phasing, which is like... Phasing? Really?
Why phasing?
It's weird. I feel like it is a strange little love letter to the people of a certain generation, and by that I mean essentially my generation of Magic players, who are old and crotchety and hate everything new. And every time something comes out, we complain, why isn't it this really terrible thing from 20 years ago that we like and nobody else does? So they were like, you know what, we're going to give you back a really terrible thing from 20 years ago.
Get off my phasing lawn!
To me, the great thing about phasing is that when Mirage came out, the 2 new mechanics were phasing and flanking. And I believe that was the first set where they started printing on-card reminder text to explain what that ability did. And flanking had reminder text to tell you what flanking was, and phasing did not. And I think it is not a coincidence that to this day I still don't entirely understand how phasing works.
Well, this one has reminder text at least, for once.
Yeah,
like...
no, if they could go back about 20 years and put that on all the phasing cards, that would have helped me out a lot.
Yeah. And there's definitely some interesting ones with, like, the wizards. Oh, the curses, though. That same dude in all 5 of the curses.
Yeah, hipster planeswalker.
Yeah, it's like he's, like, getting cursed 5 times. No, I mean, they do look very interesting and very well built, I have to say. And there's certain ones of the, I mean, like, there's only one that I would say really interests me as the lore aspect of it, that they have, his name, Edgar Martikov.
Yes.
That really kind of, like, it's like all the others, I'm like, okay, I couldn't really identify most of these. I mean, like, Miri's cool.
Miri's cool.
Because I guess she technically survived everything that happened, but we don't know what really happened to her, so maybe they'll give us some story. And I mean, the other than that, the dragons are kind of cool too, because it's like Okagachi, which is technically like which is something Kamigawa, and then the Dragon, which I think is mentioned a couple of times, and it's sort of like, well, these are cool that you're actually like giving us some things.
But Ramos is the one that appeals to my complaining old guy sensibilities.
Yeah, yeah, I get that one.
Yeah, no, I think it's great we're getting Edgar Markov. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that it is a fantastic Volkenbaga painting that's on that card, which Volkenbaga is probably going to make 5 figures for that original painting, and bless him, he deserves it. And he's got a couple other paintings of Edgar in the set on other cards, too.
Yeah, this is definitely... as usual, really good art that they've been doing, and as I said, I really like the legendaries that they're getting better new ones.
The thing I would have lost money betting on is I'm surprised that I kind of like where they ended up with the different tribal themes. I'm glad that it's not just elves, goblins, that some of them are a little bit different. I would have lost money betting on angels. I really thought we were going to get angels because I think the commander that I feel like I hear more requests for than anything else by a country mile is people really want feather. I thought this was our chance to get feather, and so I'm a little surprised we didn't get angels. I'm a little surprised we didn't get feather, but I'm happy with some of the other things that they did instead.
It's true. Except for dragons, I don't feel any of them are necessarily the most standard tribal nowadays. Like, people still think about dragons because, you know, dragons pop out. But wizards are sort of always there in the background, so you don't think about ever doing tribal with them a lot. I mean, I guess I did a tribal wizard kind of deck, sort of ish, but I do legacy a lot more, so I don't know.
I really like the Ramos Dragon engine.
Yeah.
and Dragons kind of feels like it was essentially like driven top down, that they're like, we need to get another 5-color dragon commander out there. Like, we need to give people more options who want to play 5-color dragons.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very exactly kind of what it feels like.
I don't know. Those are really mean decks, though.
Yeah, and there's certainly some kind of enablers in these decks that kind of give me pause, and I sit and I look at that and I say, I think that's going to be cool in these products, but I'm terrified about what it's going to do out in the wild, essentially, once they turn off the electricity at Jurassic Park and it gets out there into the wider Commander universe. I think that they're going to have to reprint Path of Ancestry in every Commander product from here to the end of time to get the price on that down, because essentially every Commander deck wants that. Herald's Horn kind of scares the bejesus out of me because that slots into so many decks and just gives them acceleration and card draw.
Yeah, it really does. It's like the perfect for any tribal deck, and that's the problem with it. It's like it just has that. That's the only problem also with the commander decks, is like, it's uncommon, but you can only get it here.
What else? Maybe I missed it, but did the blue? Isn't it blue, red, and black? The commander deck did not have any unlimited hand size cards, because I saw a lot of draw power on that deck, or out of that commander deck, and was really surprised that it didn't even. There's a tower that gives an unlimited hand size, and a couple artifacts give unlimited hand size.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to hurt that deck? Because that's immediate what I thought. I was like, wow, the wizard, I have that in one of my other commander decks, that you tap them, you get 3 cards. There's a lot of other cards that for draw power, and doesn't give you anything for unlimited hand size, nor any benefit for discarding cards. So I was kind of worried about getting too many cards in my hand at that point without any kind of remedy for either, like I said, unlimited hand size or discarding cards or anything like that.
True. Like, I almost feel like it required like a reliquary tower. Yeah, the tower.
Yes, there we go. That's what I was thinking of. Yep.
Because I use that. You know, go ahead.
I gotta say, it'll be interesting to see how that plays, and yeah, I think I kind of like when some of these decks have sort of immediate places where you can go in and look at them and say, okay, here's maybe where I'd swap 3, 4, 5 cards to build out some of the side themes, like build out a hand size theme or build out a Graveyard Matters theme. So I think that's one where people who get this product are going to immediately start tinkering with it.
Yeah.
I have to point one thing out that I'm looking at that looks utterly ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
The Catapult Master. Have you seen the art on that?
I'm gonna go look. What's it under?
It's just a common white card.
Okay, that's why I'm missing it.
It's 3/4 tap, 5 untap. Cats you control exile target creature.
Yeah.
It's a guy with a cat with a kitten's head on it. Actually, oh my god, you know what it looks? You know what the picture is? It's Ghostbusters 2. What's his name? The painting. It is with a cat with a kitten's head superimposed on it. I'm sharing it in chat.
The cat that I want to.
I don't think that's real. I think that someone just made that for you, Joe. They edited Catapult Master. Yeah.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
I don't know where you're at, Joe, but it's hilarious.
I agree, it's hilarious. So I had to share it.
The cat that I want to tip my hat to a little bit because it has one of my favorite lines of rules text to ever appear on a Magic card is Hungry Lynx. Whose first line of rule text: control have protection from rats.
Yeah, oh god, yeah, it's like
which is maybe my favorite new card in the set.
It's so oddly specific, but it's also like, okay, yeah, I get you. Yeah, protection from rats. I understand it, but again, it's like it's so oddly specific. It's wonderfully specific, I should say.
Just a couple other sort of like non-headliner cards that kind of interest me immediately and where I kind of like the design. Mm-hmm. Portal Mage is a card that I like because it's a card which really is only playable in Commander or other multiplayer formats, but it doesn't actually template itself that way. Like there's no text on this card that specifically refers to Commander or anything like that. But because of the way the ability is worded, it really is only a card you're going to want in a multiplayer game, and I kind of like that. There's something interesting to me about that. Mm-hmm. And then, very much on the flip side, Crimson Honor Guard is a card that I look at where it does have specific rules text templating related to Commander, but I immediately look at that, and my first thought is there a way that I want to play this in a non-Commander format? Because essentially, the way it's templated, it's going to damage it's always going to damage opponents if you're playing a format other than Commander. And so I like both of those essentially for opposite reasons. You have a card that doesn't specifically position itself as a Commander card, but you only are ever going to want to play it in multiplayer. And then you have a card which specifically is rules templated for Commander, but which immediately makes me start thinking about non-Commander formats.
Yeah, definitely there's some interesting stuff here. And again, like I always look at things less away from Commander formats for these deck. Not that I don't keep some of them in their Commander format, but I'm always like, ooh, where can I add this in my decks? And there's definitely a few things in here which are interesting. A few things that are like interesting, but I don't think I would ever put somewhere else. I mean, again, it's like Teferi's Protection. It's sort of like, that's like, okay, my life total can't change, which is actually really good text worthy because that prevents even loss of life. Actually, and that's one of the really interesting. You have perfection from everything, and permanents you control phase out. It's like, okay, it is the ultimate protection for a turn.
And
do you think that?
Go
ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say mercifully too. It also costs 3, so it is not going under an Isochron Scepter to ruin everybody's lives, which is nice.
Daniel, were you going to say?
I was going to say, since the new Commanders have such a focus on a lot of the older cards, do you think this is a way to maybe bring in older players who play in the Vintage set to maybe get them into playing Commander? Because at least where I'm at, a lot of older players aren't into Commander as much because they like their old cards and things like that. Well, since they're introducing a lot of the cards that are legal in those sets, do you think that might be a way to try to incorporate that audience into Commander?
It definitely might be, because it seems like this year Magic's Wizards has taken like a different turn. That I feel like they've been turning around from saying like at the beginning of the year, oh, we're gonna focus more on standard, and they've been doing so many things that seem to hint towards like vintage and legacy players now. And it just seems so interesting that they've taken this quick turnaround. You know, they've put more tournaments that have the options of being vintage and legacy. They're bringing back Dominaria as a set. They're bringing back core sets, which they've been gone for a couple of years. Which, again, like, core sets, it's not maybe the largest thing, but it's also, like, they did disappear. And for those of us that have lived with them for so long, it's sort of like, well, we liked them still, you know? So, I don't know.
I think that there's always a lot of hesitation on their part whenever they're doing anything that involves designing new cards that they think is going to have a impact in the Eternal formats, just because of how exponentially harder that playtesting challenge is. So I know it's something they've been gun shy about previously. Famously, I think the last card that I remember them coming out and saying that we explicitly designed it with the Eternal formats in mind was Mental Misstep, and then that turned out to be a colossal colossal mistake. And so I think they've been a little gun shy around that, and maybe this is a sign that at least in some of these Commander products that they're starting to poke back at that a little bit.
Yeah,
good point.
Commander is also such a strange format to me because it really is a very, you essentially have what is either a very casual format and a very competitive format trying to exist within the same space. And so much is just dependent on who your play group is and who you're playing with. Are you just trying to have fun? Are you trying to like assemble Voltron and attack people with 40/40s? Or are you in that group where everybody's just trying to infinite out on the third turn or trying to lock you out with Arcane Laboratory? And so essentially, even when we're talking about like Commander, there's so very different kinds of games existing within that same format.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely been one of the more interesting formats that Magic has begun to support. But why don't we move on, because, you know, we do have some more things I want to talk about. I want to talk about Three Pillar Experience for Dungeons & Dragons, because they came out with their monthly Unearthed Arcana, and I actually find this one really fascinating, because they've taken their normal experience system of, we kill creatures, we get EXP, or occasionally we accomplish a quest, we get EXP. And now it's like, well, not only do you get those things, but now you get exploration will get you experience, and also social interactions, which is an interesting one. I've had it, you could reward things in the past for social interactions, but I don't think I've ever focused on it. Also, they like overhauled it that their experience levels, you have to get 100 experience for things or something. You know, it's such a different system for it. That like when you accomplish something, you can gain like 10 EXP that the party members will get, and it's not divided. It's basically everyone that's participating gets it. So. Joe, did you have a chance to look over it?
Yeah, I looked over it a bit. I mean, I've had DMs in the past who would reward for such things, so it's not like entirely unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice that they're they're adding this I can speak today.
Yes,
they're adding it possibly into the rules. Into they're at least play testing it basically with this, and as we've heard, they're going to start moving some of this stuff into actual
materials.
Yeah, so maybe this will be something that's added into the core that, it's recommended to DMs to give experience this way, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting experimental system, I'll say, because it's there is always a little bit of focus on exploration and social interactions, but I feel like then it's focusing, specifically on it.
Right.
and they do seem to have like a tier system to it, and value based on certain types of locations, items, the kind of people you interact with, things like that, certain types of monsters, where depending on like how challenging it is, you could gain like 5 EXP, and more, so you could get like 15. So you could anywhere from like, that actually makes sense. It's like, oh, from anywhere from 20 fights to like, because I'm going to do math correctly just right now, 7. You know, so this one's very simple. I'm going to say for an Unearthed Arcana, there's not a huge complexity to it. It's exactly what it sounds like, an alternate system for rewarding experience. And like for me, I don't think I'm going to put it in because I've been using a lot of the I'm forgetting the word now. Please help me out, Joe. Milestone. Yes, I got it on my own. Milestone system currently, because it's a little easier for me and, you know, keep track of numbers. But anybody else have any kind of opinions on this one? Because I can move on then. It's an interesting one I wanted to bring in, just talk about a little bit. Okay. Why don't we, though, move on, and I do want to talk about Sidereal Confluence a little bit. So, this is a new board/card game where you need a lot of players. You need 4 to 9 players, and it's interesting because you're taking on the role of a trade and negotiation federation as all the players. And you must get the best resources, the best economy, sort of like, it seems like you're trying to thrive and be the best within the federation, but you can't do it alone, so you have to make deals with all the other players, and sort of it's this interesting balancing action of like, you have to make all the best deals and get ahead of things and use the cards and ships and various things you have in order to manipulate everyone else. So
what reminded me of like Risk without the combat.
Yes.
You know, it's all the backhanded deals and everything else, you know, so it's a big futuristic game of Risk without trying to militarily, I say that right, militarily, take over your opponents.
Yeah, it feels very brisk. I do agree with that, with what you've said. It's interesting that, you know, there are more than one ways to also gain victory points. Like, it's certain kind of technologies, certain great things with certain negotiations, gaining control of certain resources. So there are multiple levels to it also within the game itself that you could aim for victory. Like, you could easily, like, I guess, go for more of a technology-driven one, where, you know, researching a couple of them, giving you victory points to get your race the most technologically advanced over everyone else's. So it has a little bit of, I guess, like Civilization or something in it, too.
Kind of familiar with the game Seven Wonders?
Oh, yeah, Seven Wonders, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, too, a little bit of Seven Wonders also.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say it sounds to me like a little bit like Twilight Imperium, in that I don't have enough friends to ever play it. I probably couldn't understand the rules anyway. And if we tried, we'd spend the first 2.5 hours setting up the board. So,
Twilight Imperium is that one game that I always feel like it would be really cool to get a really great game of, but the fact that I know it's going to take 1 billion hours keeps me like away.
I have never played a game of Twilight Imperium that didn't end either because someone had to leave, or because everybody else just started folding to whoever was ahead in an effort to get it over with.
And that's the only thing I guess they recommend 2 to 3 hours on this one. So, I mean, already I feel like it is another long game. But that question is
that board setup or is that actual playtime?
That's yeah, I know.
I mean, that was always the Twilight Imperium problem, is that you're like, okay, we've got 5 hours carved out. We're actually going to play this time, and somebody's a half hour late showing up, and then it takes 90 minutes to set up. At which point you're like, well, we should probably get pizza, and then that takes an hour, and then by the time you actually start playing, you're 3.5 hours into your 5 hour window.
Yes. I think it's it's definitely one of those games that fits in that area. I guess the unfortunate thing is that you need a lot of time to play games like this. They're very interesting. Like, Twilight Imperium definitely has a real good step up on, like, that levels of risk, and this is another one that is a very interesting step up from that even. But again, then it's like, well, do I have 4 friends and at least 4 hours to play this? At least 4. If not more.
It sort of assumes that you've made a series of either really good or really bad life decisions that have put you in a place where you can do these things.
Oh God, yes, that actually unfortunately makes sense. Oh God. Again, it's like this one. It fills me with like, ooh, I kind of want to try it, and then you figure out, like, do I have 4 hours at least? And since it's a new game, I'm probably going to need 5 or 6 the first time I play it.
Yeah.
This is my last digression, I swear. The worst case of that I ever saw was some friends of ours. I think it was called Bundesrat, which was the game of German legislative politics. And I remember leaving the house at around 10 in the morning when they were getting set up, and coming back in at about 8 o'clock at night, and they were still going strong. And I watched over their shoulders for about 5 minutes and said to one of them, I said, who is actually winning? And he just looked up at me and with the most plaintive, like, soul-crushed voice you can possibly imagine said, I don't know.
I got a friend of mine who is big into BattleTech, and he's got one of the 8-foot, looks like Google maps, and it takes literally almost an hour to an hour and a half just to set that up, and then it takes, because the map is so long, it almost takes an hour to just get into range of combat to each other. So by the time you're battling each other, 3 hours have already gone by before you're shooting your first weapon at each other.
That's another thing. I do love BattleTech, but I can't do that one, and that's why my experience with that kept me from getting into Warhammer, because I'm like, it's the same thing. I can't do it. No.
Oh, it's a great game. Both of them are. BattleTech, MechWarrior,
oh yeah,
Warhammer, yeah, all great games.
And a lot of people were mad at
yep, nope. They're definitely. It is an interesting game. I'm gonna say that, and if you like large games like this, I guess this is one to try out. You know, because again, like Twilight Imperium, Risk, they're great games. It's just that they're hard games to play. So Be Warned is another hard game to play. So
you need a whole day set aside, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, these are like, we're going to a cabin in the woods for the weekend type activities. These are not like, come over after work, we'll have a couple of beers and some pizza activities.
Yes, this is we can leave this set up and interrupt the game for like a couple hours to get dinner kind of game.
Yeah.
All right, though. Cool. Why don't we, though, move on? And I do want to then talk about, of course, Myythic, and basically making an app-based game and like coming up with it and stuff about that. So, Daniel, why don't you lead us talking about Myythic and, going over a little more about how to get everything together with it and information like that,
Well, I guess, is there a specific question you want to start off with? Or...
That's a good one.
Okay.
That's a very good one. Okay.
That way I don't go off topic or anything else like that, because I could talk forever in a hill bean, and I've bored many, many people to death talking about Myythic. So, if there's something more specific you want to know.
All right. Okay. How was it that you?
Well, from your show, if I can go this way. All right, go ahead.
Oh. How was it that you kind of came up with the fact you were doing more of a like app-based RPG, like you have something you're running off of? Because I've seen the board games that do it, but you're like the first actual RPG I've heard of doing it. I don't know if there's others out there, but
Not that I've seen it. Trust me, we research this all the time, trying to see, what's out there. But believe it or not, the original idea, you will never guess how I came up with it. I was actually playing. I won't mention them by name, but they're the largest MMO out there. They make war a craft. Okay. And I was running one of the lower level dungeons around level 30, and I was getting pretty irritated because when I think of dungeons, I'm thinking Dungeons and Dragons. I'm thinking nasty, scary things fighting you. And this one particular dungeon I was in, where you were in a Roman Colosseum fighting flowers and different types of vegetarians. If you're a Warcraft fan around level 30, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. And I just got fed up and I said, you know what, I can do something better than this. And I literally logged out and I'm a big Warcraft. The Warcraft trading card game. Sorry. I'm a big Warcraft fan. So for me to log out of Warcraft and to actually say, I'm going to try something different. I went and I just built this online maze that we now call our Dungeon Simulator. And it worked so cool that I suddenly realized, if there was a specific set of rules on how to interact with this Dungeon Simulator, we could, in essence, get rid of the DM. And so that was the initial idea. I got laughed at for like the next 6 to 9 months trying to get somebody to help me work on how to develop this, But that's basically how it got started was that way. So did that answer your question at all?
it does answer your question, sort of how you dove into it originally. So effectively, you created the simulation world, and then you built the system that people could create characters and throw into there. Okay. That's
exactly.
That's an interesting take on it, actually. Now, how did you determine that you were going to have more of a pen and paper aspect to it? Because I feel like there is to it, definitely. Because rather than just go straight almost like a video game, of creating characters and doing stuff.
Basically, we didn't, once I got kind of a core team that would help me work on this, we didn't want to make it into a video game. Mm-hmm. Because there is DDO out there and things like that. We actually still wanted to make it a tabletop role-playing game. Well, let me break it down this way. To get Myythic made, we had to actually identify what a dungeon master did, okay? And a dungeon master creates a map, creates an environment that's in there, and so the Dungeon Simulator was our way of being able to execute those specific types of needs for the game. Mm-hmm. And then all the other mechanics that the Dungeon Master would do got reassigned to players that they could do as well.
Yeah.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, what kind of specific things did you assign to player, and how did you decide how you were going to work them out as to more player interactions kind of things?
Sure. What it breaks down to is that each player can do what's called a rule event, and a rule event is any player at any time can call it a beast, creature, random event, or a trap. Okay, and basically a room event is a player's perspective of what's going on in that room at that time. Okay, so if you call out a creature in our basic core rulebook, you roll a dice that determines what kind of creature or beast you're interacting with, and you roll another dice that tells you how many are there. Then the person that called out that creature then determines what's going on. Are they hostile? Can they talk? Can they do whatever they want? They're the one who's in charge of that particular story, really from their character's point of view. Okay, things like that. For new players that are not real strong in role playing, if I can just show you, in the back of the book, we have what's called a reaction sheet. I think it's way back there. I passed it. Yeah, we have what's called a reaction sheet. No, you can't see it, but it's there. And basically, a player then will roll a dice, a d10, and then will determine what the creature or beast that they've rolled out is doing. Okay. So if they can't come up with something on their own, for maybe new players or weaker players in role playing, we've got a guide that helps them through that process as well.
Okay.
So, yep. But again, at any point in time, any player can do that aspect of calling out traps, calling out random events, things like that, and then everything else is determined by dice rolls. Like I said, as to either what comes out, what type of creature comes out, how many of them come out, and things like that.
Cool. Okay. That's a very interesting aspect to it, definitely, that the other players can, to a degree, like, you can make it that there's more challenge on your, basically as a player, rather than as the, like a game master would set up for you.
Right.
Let's see.
In a way, this has been kind of described as each player, in a way, is a limited DM themselves, because they can control whatever part of the environment that they want. Now, in case things get way out of control, then there's another mechanic that's called a mulligan. And a mulligan is a way to kind of keep players in check, okay? So if somebody is doing something that's just way out there, you can use a mulligan to basically, like a DM would, say, nope, I take that away from you, you can't do that. But you have limited numbers of those mulligans that you can do. You have a combat mulligan, and then you have a non-combat mulligan as well. But mulligans are also used to create different environments that a DM would put into a room for a specific character. So let's say you're a rogue, and you want a couple turns to safely be able to apply some poison. Okay, well, the room description on the Dungeon Simulator doesn't say specifically that there's a shadow. Well, then you can say, hey, I'm going to call a mulligan. There's a shadow over here in the room. I'm going to go over, hide my character in the shadow where I can safely apply my poisons. Nobody can see me until I'm ready to come out and use my weapon. Once they use that mulligan, it's one of their 3 that they can use. That shadow is then part of the story, and they can move on.
Cool. Just before I go into more questions, Joe, do you have any kind of questions right now that you've come up with, or?
Not off the top of my head yet.
Okay. So I did want to ask here. So you have everything pretty well set up now. We've talked about the basics. How did you just stick with like the standard fantasy for the class? Is there anything special you wanted to do when you're making like the classes and stuff? How about that?
For the basic rule book, you gotta understand that we didn't really know how well it was going to work without a dungeon master, so we tried to make everything as simple as possible. Our classes are simple and things like that, and so we just have a basic paladin and classes and things like that. What we're working on right now, and it's just literally in still paper form, but this is what it looks like now. It's our advanced rule book. This is, we're going to have more of our more advanced classes that can do more things, or classes that actually have like ammunition that you got to keep track of. You get limited amounts of things and stuff like that. So, but our classes are pretty much geared towards fantasy.
Cool. Let's see here. So, now, was it difficult coming up with, like, on the side, what you're going to release it to? Like, releasing the system onto? Like, especially, because I guess you're balancing out both releasing it in a physical form / PDF, and then also an electronic form. Did that make it just like, because I feel like most times people are just doing one or the other, and now you were doing 2 at the same time. Was that? Like, how much of a challenge is that? Yeah.
It is. It's always a challenge, because everything we did, we have to say, okay, does this work with our dungeon simulator? Does this dungeon simulator work with our rules? And the biggest challenge we had for the longest time was, how do players search a room? And for the longest time, we didn't have anything. And so when players ask, well, how do I search a room? I said, well, unless the dungeon simulator says there's something to search for, you can't really do that. So it literally took a long time to figure it out. Now we've actually got a mechanic that will be released in our advanced rulebook that will actually now allow players to search rooms and things like that. We had to literally get the game invented first, to see how it works. Now that we know how it works, now that we're really familiar with the mechanics and how it works, now we're just a flood of ideas on, okay, here's how we can expand on it. Here's how we can add a lot more fluff that more experienced players have been wanting and stuff like that, and being able to now incorporate that into a model that has no dungeon master.
Cool. Yeah, that's you definitely have come up with a very interesting model for a game. I do have to agree. It actually, like, you know, it caught my eye that you've the DM-less game, you know, and
right.
Your dungeon.
And one thing I want to like to point out too about the dungeon simulator is what's really neat about that. The biggest concern we always had was not letting the game become stagnant. Okay, so by the game being online or some kind of medium like that, we're able to always add new content. So in the last 6 weeks, we've actually added 6 new rooms. We can actually rearrange the map. And now with our art team, we're actually working on a brand new level 3, a brand new content, just completely from scratch.
Okay, cool. Now, there's another question for you that I have. How about, like, how did you come about getting a progression system, especially for classes
with
and
stuff like that?
Oh, you froze up there for a second. Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat that?
Oh, I was going to ask, how did you think about coming out with a progression system for your system? Like, because there's usually like a leveling system or sometime or experience, and how did you use that with the app itself? That, like, as your characters would go and be more powerful when they're going to new places, you know.
Well, we have a leveling system that comes in the rule book. All the app does is literally just gives you where you're at and what directions to move into. Mm-hmm. Once that's done, you could literally, if you're using a laptop, you could literally just shut down the laptop for that particular room, and everything else that you need is in the rule book. So each creature is assigned hit points, experience, and things like that. So once creatures are dead, then anybody can basically pull out the book and go, okay, well, here's how much experience was earned, this is how much gold was earned. There's a loot system in the back of the book also based on how many creatures you get, tells you how many items you can pick up, and things like that. And then players just distribute, okay, well, we got this, who needs it, you know, and stuff like that.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did, to a good degree. I think, like,
okay.
Effectively, it's set up that, I guess since players are almost choosing the monsters, they would choose more difficult ones as they become more powerful too?
No, what players do is they would say, like, creatures, and then they roll a dice. So what comes out is still random to the player, okay? There's a chart, I believe it's a D12 you roll, and based on that D12 roll, we'll tell you what creature comes out. And yeah, there are some fairly simple creatures to defeat at level 1, and then there's some, if you better pray to God you've got a large party, because if you don't, you're going to die. So we have made it very easy and very difficult creatures on every level.
Okay, and I guess as you go more levels, it's going to be progressively getting difficult too anyway.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that will come to the progression system. Okay, now
Yes.
I understand that now. Gotcha. Awesome.
Yep.
I think I've got the majority of questions I kind of wanted to ask about the system. If there's anything else you kind of want to tell us about it for a little bit, any, like, major points based on these?
Well, something my wife pointed out was that one thing that we're going to be adding to the game that players are really having a lot of fun with is something that we're calling the automatic room event, which is now every time you go into a room, just something automatically happens. And so you roll a d20, and as soon as and then players have to interact with whatever that room event is. And it can be something fairly simple. Actually, on a D20, there's 5 rolls that you can get that actually nothing happens. But it can be something as devastating as a fire trap immediately happening, to a druid spirit showing up, giving you some boost or benefits. There's one that actually gives you a treasure roll or things like that. Just things that automatically happen that players can interact with. And sometimes they can be pretty brutal, some of the encounters, that sometimes after that they go, don't call anything else out. We've had enough in this room. Let's move on. And there have been games where we've played for 2-3 hours at a time, and we've only gotten 1 or 2 rooms into the game.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you can just breeze through. I mean, technically, yeah, I can, because I know the way through the map. I can click through the map in 30 seconds, but that's not playing the game. Playing the game is actually sitting down and interacting with the dungeon simulator, interacting with all the rules and things like that, and you can sit down and actually have a 2, 3, 4, 5 hour play session.
Okay. So is the map the same every time, or is there like a little bit of change in the map that can occur?
It's growing. I'll put it that way. The main way through the map has stayed. We've just added new content to it. But if we get requests, all we gotta do is contact our programming team and say, hey, let's rearrange the map, and we can just easily just rearrange the map. So that way, when you go into room A, oh wait a minute, this isn't the same room. Okay, they rearranged the map. So yeah, it's totally possible to completely reshuffle what kind of room environment that you're in.
Okay. Cool. Definitely Myythic is one of the more interesting RPGs I've heard about in recent the last couple of years, I think, just because of the nature of it. Now, I do want to move on and focus a little bit more on the process of making your own game, really, because that's another thing that's related to this, is that you made your own system, and there are plenty of people that make other things too. They make RPGs, tabletop systems, but you've managed to get it published out. What kind of challenges did you face on the getting it published side, and was it difficult to get everything set up and together and produce it yourself and get it out?
Oh my gosh, the printing process was horrendous. We literally spent hundreds of dollars on products that were misprint here, offset here, something like that. Just it literally took us a good chunk of money to get our book looking the way it needed to look. And I mean, we were really nitpicky. Just on our binder here alone, we have our logo here, and sometimes it was just off that way, just enough to drive me nuts. It's like, no, we got to redo it. Let's remove our logo. Let's do this and things like that. As for getting itself public or getting it out there, the fact that we have a game with no dungeon master just makes us skeptical as it is, and no one's ever heard of Cactus Totem Gaming. So it's like, okay, so we have an unknown company with an unknown product, and they're saying it runs without a dungeon master. Okay. Then they go to the Myythic.com site and they run through it and they go, well, what is this? How can this be a tabletop role-playing game? So fighting through skepticism and fighting a lot of, well, this can't work, or this doesn't, it has been probably the number one challenge that we've had. Whenever we go to a convention, we'll sell out once we do a couple of game demos. People go, wow, this is really cool. Okay, now we know how it works. We want to buy it now after we do a game demo. So it's kind of hard to run around the country doing game demos for everybody to do it, but that's basically how it works. Is we'll go to a comic book shop or a store and things like that. We'll show them how the game works and things like that. They may not want it right away. They may say, well, can you come in and show some of our D&D players how to play it? Okay, we'll come in, we'll show them how to play it, things like that, and then based on them running to the store owner saying, yes, get this game, it's great, or not, will be determined on how we can get the game into it or not.
Now, did you have any problem with because I know a lot of games like tabletop or role-playing games and stuff now go to things like Kickstarter and other stuff like that. Did you ever have to think about doing that, either for one thing, the funding, or for even just getting the name out there in a way too?
We did Kickstarter pretty early on, and it had no luck with it for the same reason. It was, well, what do you mean it runs without a DM and things like that? We had, at that time, very little art to show for it and things like that, and so people just didn't want to back it because there was just too many unknowns about it. Okay, it's an RPG, no DM, it works, there's a computer thing with it, and it was just like, well, it's too confusing, I'm not going to support you, were the comments that we were getting back on it now. So but now we do have investors, business partners and things like that is helping us to get the financial aspect of the of what we need out there. So so did that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it did. Okay. All right.
What are you planning on doing? Sorry.
Okay.
I was just gonna say one of the real things that I think you learn and appreciate about in any kind of games business as soon as you get into it is that the hardest way to sell a game, whether it's a video game, a board game, any kind of game, is when your selling point is it's a lot of fun when you play it. That's the best kind of game, and it's also the hardest sales pitch to make in whatever medium you're in. Yeah. It's really easy to sell a game that says Call of Duty on the box. It's really easy to sell a game that has a recognizable comic book character on the packaging. It's really easy to sell a game that is very similar to something that somebody has already played and already likes. The hardest marketing pitch in the universe is, you've never heard of this, and it's difficult to explain, but if you try it, it's fun, I swear. And so any time that a product like that launches, it literally is beating the odds at every single step of the way, and it's a really cool thing.
Especially since this is a selling point too, which throws a lot of people off. We're not D&D.
Yeah.
You know, we use nothing like D&D. To attack, you use a D10. To defend, you're using a D12 plus modifiers for bonuses. That just blows people away. It's like, what do you mean you're not rolling a D20? It's like, no, this is how.
Yeah, there's so many people. Okay, it's frozen up again. little internet connection issues here, just a tiny bit.
It's just really fun. If you'll just let me show you, it's really fun.
Yeah, and as I was trying to say there, the getting people beyond a D20 system sometimes can be hard too. You know, it's sort of like people are ingrained with it because of D&D a little bit, and there are so many other systems out there. Like me, as a person that loves RPG systems, there's like even a 2D20 system that exists out there, and people are like, what's this? Joe, you had something you wanted to say too.
Well, actually, I have two things. One, I was going to say, are you planning on doing any of like the PAX conventions? Like, I know like they're doing PAX Unplugged now in the Northeast for the first time.
Any convention that we can financially get to, we would love to go to. We're in Missouri. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. So there's a big convention called Vision Con. That's one of the big ones here in southern Missouri that we go to, that we've been to every year, that we've been very successful at. So yes, we would love to get into any convention that we would be able to get to. So absolutely would love to do so.
Mm-hmm. And the other question I had, because I actually designed my own system that I still need to work on more. How hard did you find it to design your own dice system for rolling and everything? Because I know that's where I've struggled.
It was, oh my gosh, the screaming matches we went through over the dice system on how it was supposed to work. Because first of all, you know, for the longest time we had it where the attacker uses the bigger dice, the defender uses the little dice, you know, so we went back and forth. I mean, oh my gosh, we rolled so many dice trying to figure out what to do. But basically we literally, as for the process, we went and looked at every system out there and said, okay, how does D&D work? Okay, they work D20. Okay, how does oh my gosh, forgetting the other Pathfinder. How does all these other systems work? And then it's like, okay, well, if they're using all these, what's left? I think that's how we came up with. Okay, it's like, okay, this system uses this dice, and it came up with a 12 and a 10 were not used. So it's like, okay, so if a 10 and a 12 are not used in the major games that are out there, let's find some way to do it with a D10 and a D12, so that way we're different. So that's how we came up with it, was just by studying other games out there, and like I said, what's left. So,
and it seems like you keep things relatively simple too, which is probably it helps a little because you're just rolling the two dice to compare it a little bit there.
Yes.
Now,
yeah.
Do you have any kind of like any kind of other kind of like skill uses or anything, or is that you might roll dice for, or?
Yes, we have basic skills for players to pick from. Some are just generic skills that all players can pick from. Then we have class-specific skills, again based on your class, and then in our advanced rules, we're getting into more in-depth character skills that they can pick, where instead of putting modifiers in their stat sheets, they can boost their spells, or they can boost their abilities or things like that. as they level up.
Okay. Now, there's one last question I do want to ask about the process of creating the game. How did you go about with, like, play testing? Like, I know you can always play test, like, in-house for things with the people you have, but how did you, like, what was your process for going to, like, just public people for more play testing and stuff, too, when you were going, you know, trying to get more opinions?
We put out on our Facebook page, hey, we're beta testing, open to the public, anyone who's interested, and and then people that we would know would come in. Like right now, I am currently at the one of the local comic book shops here in Springfield, where every Tuesday we have an open alpha test of our new classes that we're going to introduce in Myythic with our advanced rulebook. And so what we'll do is we'll sit down, we'll play, and then give like a half hour and then ask the players, hey, okay, how did this new class work? What did you like? What didn't you like about it? What needs to be changed? And things like that. And honestly, we just do that until we feel that all the bugs have been worked out of it. So, as a matter of fact, last Tuesday was the first time we had actually play tested all of our new classes for the first time together to see how they interacted with each other. And it was a pretty good alpha test.
Cool. So it sounds like things are coming along with the way you've been playtesting too. All right, awesome. It looks like I think we've dove into Myythic really cool, and it sounds like you could talk a lot about it.
Yes, I could. Sorry.
No, it's just fine. You know, when you have a passion for something and can talk about it for hours, I love doing that too. You know. But I do want to, of course, move on and try to get through our end of our show here eventually. So why don't we move on to, of course, stories from the table, where we like to share stories from our gaming table experience. This is, again, as I've always said, you can have collectible card game experience, role-playing game, or just a simple board game if you had, like, an awesome session of some kind of... Like, we've talked a little bit about some stories here, but, you know... let's dive into depths a little bit. So, Daniel, since you are our new guest, why don't you start with a interesting story that you have?
Absolutely, and of course it has to deal with Myythic. So
I can accept that.
Okay. Well, in the second level of Myythic, there are two creatures that respawn more of its own kind. Okay, and so my wife and I were playing, and we decided to use the chart in the back of the book that says what creatures do. And so what it said was that one creature is fighting another creature, so we had to roll to see what the two creatures were. And the two creatures was an undead priest that brings in worshippers, and when they die, then the priest can bring back the ones that already died. They were fighting our take on Warcraft. We have firelocks. Well, if you know anything about Warcraft, murlocs, there's a lot of them. So our firelocks kept spawning more and more and more and more firelocks. So my wife and I looked at this and said, okay, they technically don't see each other. That would be a lot of experience, but I don't know if I could even do the math to keep track of how many undead worshippers were being summoned, how many of them kept getting resurrected, and how many murloc or firelocks could come out. So it's like, yeah, we better just leave this room very, very quiet before, because they're not battling us, they're battling each other, and we don't know how long this battle has been going on. So it's like, yeah, we're just gonna back out of this room and just and not come back for that. But yeah, so just the chance of us getting the two creatures that just spawn more stuff, and they happen to be battling each other, it's like, yeah, we're gonna leave this one alone and just go away. So but I gotta tell one just real quick one too. Last Tuesday we were beta testing a new class called a Reaper, and my wife was playing it, and we literally just started, got into the first room. We did what was called a automatic room event, and it was a fire trap, and the hit location on my wife's character, the rogue, was her head. So immediately, 2 seconds into the game, our new class died from a fire trap. So we all said, yep, game over, let's start over. And we literally had to start 30 seconds into testing our new classes for the first time. So we know that a Reaper cannot survive a shot to the head with fire.
Well, it's a good test out to begin with.
That was a good test to start off with, yes. That class died just like that. So, yep, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I guess relatively hot actually in that case. So Orcish Librarian, last time you had an interesting story. Do you have another one for us this week?
I have no idea if it's as interesting or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I guess what I'll just talk about real quick today is the thing I love so much about games is that there's infinite possibility to create new and different things, even if they're not new and different, even if they're just variations on formats, even if they're just little tweaks on things that have already existed. And the thing I love so much about games is that I keep finding new ones that speak to me in different ways. Firewatch is a little video game. It's available on PC. It's available on console. I think it's $10. It's extremely affordable. It's my pick for the game of last year. Of all the games I played last year, Firewatch is the one that spoke to me the most by leaps and bounds. And it's a little kind of a walking simulator, kind of a talking simulator set in a national forest where your character is spending the summer there in the forest as a fire lookout. And it's a beautiful game. The art is beautiful. The writing is just fantastic. The voice acting is fantastic. And it's a game that I kind of got by accident. I started playing it at about 11 o'clock at night, and I think I played straight through until 3, 4 in the morning because it's a short game and I just wanted to get to the end. And I went back months later and played it again and found whole new things in it that I didn't find the first time through. And it was, for me, as someone who spends a lot of time playing video games, who spent a lot of time working on video games, it just amazes me that people continue to do new and cool things with this medium. And I love that games always have something new to say.
Mm-hmm. I do like we've reached an era where, like, I mean, as much as it's awesome that we have the renaissance of tabletop games, there is this sometimes difficulty with certain types of games where you need things like DM or someone to run the board game. And now we've reached this point in time, because we have such great electronic technology, we can have apps and programs that we can basically replace what we don't need, that like everybody can be a player. Or for certain games like Mansions of Madness, where normally you need someone to run it, guess what? We can have the computer do it for us, the phone do it for us. It'll run the scenarios pretty much like the game master would, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And I think that's like an interesting evolution where because we have such a huge online community and an offline community, that we can have them come together a little bit too, which is good. And there are some great games like Firewatch out there, which are like, I guess people like to call them walking simulators, but that's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's a story.
And I also like, that's the category I see it lumped in with, but I don't think that's the way I would think about Firewatch. And I'll get off this topic because I could talk for hours about Firewatch. But it's to me, the thing that stands out to me so much about it, and I kind of had to play it a couple times to really get this, is it's one of the most adult games I've played in years. And usually when someone uses adult as a descriptor, they're talking about explicit in some way or another. Mm-hmm. I don't use adult in that context. I use adult in the context of, it's a game that really tries to, in what I think is a really interesting way, grapple with problems that we encounter in our adult lives. Like Firewatch is very much a game about what it means to have tremendous problems and to make the decision that you're going to kind of run away from them, and the impact that has on you and the people around you. And that was what I got more and more the more I played through Firewatch. And it's a very adult game, and it's very exciting to me.
Cool. All right. Well, I want to move on to our last topic for today, to finish up today, and it's, of course, gaming sage advice, where I sort of ask a single, more, what's a great way of describing this? I wouldn't call it rhetorical, but a question to the masses, or to us, that would help out other people in the gaming community in a way. Now, I think I do want to ask a little bit one. I think I may have asked this one before, but I think because now the people, with the group we have now, I kind of do want to sort of go on. It's like, when you're making something new, what are the steps that you should take to bring it to, to perdition? Perdition, yes, thank you. I'm trying to say the wrong. Purition. Purition.
No. Fruition.
Flourishing. Oh my God.
It's an F, not a P.
I don't know why I'm doing P today. Wow. Thank you, spelling. You went out the window for me. Fruition. Yes. I mean, it's like each of us has our own processes for making something, but it's also like taking those initial steps. And for my, but the advice I think I may have sort of given previously myself to sort of start this one out is that I always look to what I have in mind and put something down and then talk to people about it and then work from there. What's the creative process that you folks have to do the same in a way? I think it pertains a little bit to today. Orcish Librarian, we'll start with you. Creative process for creation.
I mean, it varies hugely depending on what it is that I'm doing. If for how I would write a short story is very different from how I would go about working in game development. I think the thing that kind of ties it all together for me is try to go into it with an idea, a very clear idea of what are the things that you care about the most. What are the things that are the most important to you? What are the aspects, whether it's a story aspect, whether it's a character, whether it's a gameplay aspect? What are the things that got you excited that you wanted to do this in the first place? Know that going in, and then once you're actually working on it, be prepared for it to do a 90-degree turn in any given direction. Mm-hmm. The things that you thought were the coolest may turn out to be, they don't work. Or you may, through complete serendipity or through 300 hours of grinding, you may figure out something else that actually is the direction that this project wants to go in. Mm-hmm. Give yourself the permission to follow those new directions, because that's how you're going to end up with the thing that you're the happiest with. Go into it thinking about it and understanding what you're most excited and animated by, and that's great because, at least for me, I have to have that to be able to start. But then once you're into it, allow it to surprise you and be ready for that to happen.
Cool. Daniel, do you have...
Yeah, I think for me, I work better with a group of people. Mm-hmm. And the people that I have that surround me with Cactus Totem Gaming are absolutely ingenious, and when I can pull from other people and other people can pull from me, ideas just explode. I mean, if I had literally made Myythic the way I had first envisioned it, the way I wanted it to, with nobody else's input, my game flat out would have been boring. It would have been. I had people tell me, this is a boring game, you need to add this. This is boring, you need to add that. This Cactus Totem right here was someone basically begged me, hey, put this in, it'll put some humor into the game, and it worked so well that we made it our logo, we made it our the point. So for me, I need other people to get ideas from, to say, hey, this is what we got, what do you think? Because they have their own wide variety of knowledge that they can bring into a project on this. As my wife suggested, an idea for an RPG that's based on rock, paper, scissors, and that's all I'll say about it. But her idea was so awesome that it's like, okay, let's see what comes of this, okay?
Yeah.
And so far it's actually working out really well. So for me, it's really important to have a group of people that have the same passion, same ideas, to get some other ideas from.
Cool. Joe, do you have anything you want to add to this topic? What's the question?
Well, I agree. I mean, bouncing ideas off other people, I think, is a necessity a lot of the time, especially when you're doing something that is for like a game or something like that, because you want to make sure you get other people's points of view so you can, design it for not just for your own enjoyment. Something you might find really, really fun might not work on a mass appeal. Mm-hmm. So the more people you can get involved with it, the better. Also, trying to keep things simple at first. I think that's one of the places I ran into issues with was, in the game I'm still trying to design, was my to hit chart that I actually wanted, I wanted to make it as realistic as possible of where, when you're shooting someone, where the bullet's going to land. And the chart I have currently is a mess. And I think I went way too complex to try to do that. It's like, I wanted to get so specific in the areas that it doesn't work with dice.
Yeah.
Getting feedback too is also beta testing feedback is also essential to the creative process too, because we made Myythic, the core rulebook is just as basic as you can get. Then we were listening to our fan base and what do you want in it? What are you looking for that you would like to see in it? So our advanced rulebook is nothing but things that our fan base has said. We love the game, but we'd like to see this. We love the game, but we want this added to it and things like that. And so we have literally built our advanced rulebook based on what players have said. We love your core game, but we want a little bit more content to it. So please add this.
Yeah.
And not just getting feedback, but then having the ability to listen and act on it is incredibly important. I can't tell you the number of playtests I've sat in a room where the playtest feedback comes in, and the first thing that happens is all the developers start listing all the reasons that the playtesters are wrong. and there's this natural human reaction that when you get feedback about something you've made, you want to defend your creation and you want to explain to the people who are actually using it, like, no, here's why you're doing it wrong. And that's entirely the opposite purpose of the exercise. And it's always fine to take critical feedback and to think about it hard, absorb it, and then decide that you still want to go in a different direction because you have a reason why you're doing it. But it really is hard to get over that initial hump of, you're doing it wrong, you're not doing what I wanted you to do, and to actually be open to it. So that's a huge part of the process.
Yep. Cool. All right. I think that's a pretty good show for today. So why don't I kind of lead us into the back end? We got some interesting topics. We learned some interesting things. Learned about a little bit about magic and Myythic. Hey, it's a good day. So, all right. Why don't we basically we'll go counterclockwise today because the way I'm positioning everybody. Daniel, why don't you basically give out where people could check in with you? What is Myythic's website, information like that? Anything you want people to check out?
Sure. We have our initial website is Cactus Totem Gaming, and Cactus is spelled with 2 Y's, so it's CACTYYS totemgaming.com. The Dungeon Simulator is at Myythic.com, spelled with 2 Y's in Myythic. The game can be bought both on the Myythic.com site and at the Cactus Totem Gaming website. We're also in a game store in Delaware, in Newark, Delaware. We're in game store in Iowa and in Ozark, Missouri. So that is where you can check us out at. We also have Facebook too. So
cool. Yep, I'll put some links in the description of the YouTube video when I when I put that up online later on this week.
Cool, thank you.
Orcish Librarian, what do you have to sort of support out today? Just yourself or something new?
I'm on Twitter. I'm at bibliovororc on Twitter. It is a place to go if you want bad puns and questionable magic content. It has been pointed out to me today that based on comments I made earlier on the stream, I clearly still don't understand how phasing works, so I would not come to me for rules advice or deck tech. But if you like puns, yeah, I'm on Twitter.
Okay, cool. Joe.
I pimp you.
You do. You do.
We will be off tomorrow.
Yep.
And then we'll be back, again for next Saturday. for more of this, and then I think next Sunday we're planning to do some kind of one shot of something or other.
I was hoping to do something this week, but I didn't have the time to set anything up extra. You know, I have plenty of plans for the game, but we're not running the normal game, so I'll figure something out, and we'll put it together for not tomorrow, but the Sunday after that's stream. And other than that, I think we are good to go. Videos up on the channel for YouTube. I'll be back at least tomorrow evening for maybe some more multiplayer. I don't know if I'm doing Civ 6 with Ollie and Winter Bear or something else entirely. Expect a couple. I'm actually planning out a couple more RPG shows on the channel here at some point in the near future. I'm brainstorming ideas, so I'm hoping to get some started soon. I'll keep people informed. Any other kind of supports like Discord, Patreon, and stuff are down in the information below if you want to check that out. And otherwise than that, I hope everybody had a great day and enjoyed joining us for the show. And we'll see you all. Me and Joe will see you next week, and hopefully maybe someday we can have our guests on again for some more exciting adventures here, because it's always fun. Yep. Bye, everyone.
Bye.